Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Tax Matters. I'm Chamaka Ohauchi. We begin this episode by reminding companies' income tax filers of the lifeline given out by the FIRS just last week. And that is talking about the waiver of penalties and interest on outstanding tax liabilities, provided the principal sum is offset before 31st December 2023. What a great amnesty! Please grab this opportunity with both hands. A few episodes ago, we began a series to celebrate the 30th anniversary of value-added tax in Nigeria, and we did promise that from now through to the first few months of 2024, we shall be bringing your way features on value-added tax in Nigeria. The beginning, the journey so far. Today, we have the pleasure of bringing to our viewers Chief David Ajibola Olorunleke, one of the men and women who were there at the very beginning. Chief Olorunleke served as FIRS chairman between 1978 and 1992, from where he moved up to serve as Director General, Federal Ministry of Finance. Chief Olorunleke, thank you for joining us on Tax Matters.
Thank you.
VAT is 30 years old in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The decree was promulgated in 1993, while implementation commenced in January 1994. You were the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service from 1978 to 1992, from where you moved to become Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Finance. Permanent secretaries were then known as Director General. So we can see that you were at the beginning and through it all. Can you give us a background to the introduction of VAT into the Nigerian tax system, considering the fact that we had sales tax before VAT was introduced?
It is true that we had sales tax before VAT. The federal government, first of all, introduced the sales tax on petroleum products at petrol stations. You have to pay an extra sales tax of, I think, ₦1 per liter or something, which was an extra fund to the revenue at that time. And before NNPC distributed these products to all the filling stations in the country. Before anybody comes to NNPC to take the product, you will have paid the sales tax. Now, later on, this was extended to other products at the state's level. And most of the things we considered was, how do you collect sales tax? It was all right with petrol because we had only one distributor, and that was NNPC. So you just charge NNPC the percentage, and then it reflects on the distribution throughout the country. But now, if it's sales tax on all products, how do you collect the sales tax? Who is the major distributor of all these products, where you can charge the person the sales tax? We had difficulty in respect of that. So sales tax at that time was not possible on other products. And so when you introduce it to other products, the other states were now complaining that they were not able to collect, and the only product that they were able to collect upon was beer, which was manufactured by a few companies in Lagos. Those were the people distributing taxable products. And now they were complaining that when these companies want to remit the money collected on sales tax, they will distribute and send the check to Lagos State, because the products are from Lagos. Sometimes they will be kind enough to introduce as many checks as many states that are participating. But then the states are not able to collect their dues. And they sometimes argue that what is being consumed in their states is not commensurate with the checks they are getting from the companies, because some of the products that are sold to Lagos distributors still find their way into all the other states through some other means. So it is not everything that goes to Lagos that is consumed in Lagos, and therefore it was difficult to know exactly how much each state is consuming. And so we decided to think out of the box and see how best to do these things. And we said, okay, the best thing is to introduce the VAT. When we introduced VAT, the idea was that we cannot be collecting VAT through the markets, through the beer parlors, because they will not keep records. So the best we could do is target all goods that are coming from abroad and put the tax on them at that entry point, target all the manufacturers within the country, and target whatever they are producing at the point of distribution. You know, as of now, we cannot target everything. Sales tax or VAT is best collected at the point of sale, but it is not possible in this country as of now, because the point of sale is at the market. A few at the shops. At the shops, how many shops do we have? And they don't keep records. So this is the reason why we suggested that only one single collecting authority, and we suggested FIRS because they are the most widespread. If FIRS collects, then they can put it in a basket and share it in accordance with the consumption perspective. Now, you mentioned the decree came out and the implementation was in 1994. Okay, we completed all arrangements to introduce VAT before 1992, before I left the FIRS.
We are looking at 30 years of VAT in Nigeria. As we said in the introduction, Chief David Olorunleke served as Executive Chairman of the FIRS from 1978 to 1992, from where he moved up to serve as the Director General of the Federal Ministry of Finance, the equivalent of Permanent Secretary. Chief Olorunleke was succeeded as FIRS Chairman in 1992 by Dr. J.K. Naiju, who served from 1992 to 1999. In the course of this series, you will be hearing from Dr. J.K. Naiju, Ms. Emmanuel Ijewere, and many others who were there at the beginning. In June 1993, federal elections were held to usher in civilian rule after many years of military rule. In the wake of the turmoil that followed the annulment of the June 12, 1993 elections, then President Ibrahim Babangida stepped aside and handed over to an interim government headed by Chief Ernest Shonekan. The interim government lasted for 90 days, from August 17th to November 17th, 1993, when the late General Sani Abacha took over the reins of government. As you will hear presently from our guests, the transition from sales tax to VAT, or simply put, the processes leading to the introduction of VAT in Nigeria, took place during these interesting times.
We introduced it to Mr. Shonekan's government. As of that time, many people or many companies were suffering for lack of money. They said their warehouses were full, People were not buying. There was shortage of cash in the country. And he told us that, look, you cannot go and introduce the price increase by introducing VAT. Please withdraw this memo. And we withdrew the memo. I was then the Director General. In 6 months' time, we introduced the memo again, and it was agreed. And when Abuja came, he now was convinced that it was not necessary for us to introduce VAT. Luckily, I was in the council that day. My minister was not even there at that moment. So I was deputizing for him. And I had to convince Abuja that, look, in other countries around us in Africa, they have introduced VAT. It's another means of collecting revenue. We are starting with 5%. Others have gone to 17, 20, and all the rest. So let us try with 5%. And that is how we got it implemented. So even though we got it prepared, everything was ready before 1994, but we were not able to introduce it until 1994. So that's the history of VAT for you.
Wow, quite an interesting one.
Yes.
That, we can authoritatively say, was the beginning of VAT in Nigeria. We are sure you're having fun, even as you are getting vital historical tips. In the coming episodes, you'll be hearing more from Chief Olorunleke, from Dr. J.K. Naiju, from Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere, and from other distinguished men and women who were there at the beginning. VAT is 30 years in Nigeria.
Do you provide goods and services? Then you must answer these important questions. Are you registered for VAT? Do you charge VAT on the goods and services you provide? Do you keep records of all your transactions? Do you file VAT returns? Do you remit VAT collected to government coffers? If your answer to any of these questions is no, then you are breaking the law. The law demands total compliance. Therefore, you must register for VAT. You must charge VAT on goods and services. You must file VAT returns. And you must remit all VAT collected on behalf of government within 21 days to the bank nearest to you. To do otherwise is a crime punishable everywhere in the world. VAT is prescribed by the law. Do the right thing. Collect and pay VAT. This message is from the FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
You're watching Tax Matters, your home for information and education on tax and taxation. Nigeria operates a decentralized tax system where each level of government is independently responsible for the administration of taxes within its jurisdiction. The body in charge of collecting and administering federal taxes is the Federal Inland Revenue Service. The taxes and levies and charges of the states are handled by the State Boards of Internal Revenue, while the ones due to the local governments are handled by the local revenue committees. Every taxable entity, be it an individual or a corporate entity level, has tax obligations to perform to the relevant tax authorities. Nigeria operates a self-assessment regime which gives taxpayers the opportunity and responsibility to assess themselves and pay their tax liabilities voluntarily. This is because taxpayers have detailed information about their own business activities and are in a better position to assess their own tax liabilities. In line with the above, taxpayers are first required by law to register for taxing purposes with the relevant tax authorities by providing accurate information and documents upon which a taxpayer identification number is issued to them. Next is the keeping of accurate books of records. These include sales and purchases, incomes and expenditure, etc., to enable adequate filing of tax returns. At the end of the assessment year, every entity is required by law to voluntarily file their tax returns in a manner prescribed by the relevant tax laws and pay the taxes due. For taxes due to the FIRS, taxpayers are required to file and pay via the tax pro marks on or before the due date, after which the taxpayer is issued with a receipt for taxes paid. To enable taxpayers file and pay the right amount of taxes due to them and avoid additional assessment by tax authorities, record keeping is key. Again, accurate record keeping is key. The FIRS makes it a point of duty to educate and enlighten taxpayers at different fora and at every opportunity on their tax obligations, rights, and duties. And so, on Monday, the 4th of December 2023, the Taxpayers Service Department of the FIRS organized a sensitization and enlightenment workshop on bookkeeping and documentation, the role of taxpayers, tax consultants, and traditional rulers in facilitating voluntary tax compliance to bring them up to speed with regards to what is required of them under the various tax laws. The event was held in Kano State. Hajiya Hafsat Sani is the State Coordinator, Jigawa, Kano and Katsina Tax Offices of the FIRS.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service, in an effort to ensure voluntary compliance through proper bookkeeping and documentation, deemed it fit to organize this sensitization and enlightenment program. This will assist the service in administering the tax laws fairly, which translates to voluntary compliance. For any tax system to strive in any clime, there must be a robust and effective bookkeeping and documentation system to provide and maintain access to up-to-date and adequate data and information on all taxable persons, individuals, corporate bodies, or all agencies of government involved in the collection of revenue for the purpose of efficient, effective, and correct tax administration and to prevent tax evasion or fraud. Three key stakeholders to achieving these functions are the taxpayers, tax consultants, and our royal fathers, the traditional rulers. Your Royal Highnesses or revered fathers, if you have your support and we know you are on our side, half of our work is done. Our esteemed taxpayers, you are our kings. And I want you to know that all we do for you. Tax consultants, you are our partners in progress.
The Executive Chairman FIRS, Dr. Zacchaeus Adedeji, was ably represented at the event by the Director Taxpayer Services Department, Hajiya Sadatu Yero, who delivered the keynote address.
Taxpayers being our major stakeholders, it is important to keep them informed, sensitized and engaged and educated to enable them fulfill their tax obligation without any hitches. The strategic reforms carried out by the service has continuously improved the revenue collected by the service. As the revenue collected by the service at the end of the year 2022 was 10.1 trillion, while the service has collected more than 10 trillion as at 15th November 2023. The theme for the sensitization program is in tandem with the relevant provision of the law, which requires every business to keep proper records and books of all their transaction activities relating to taxable goods and services. And this record, amongst others, include cash book, sales and purchase book, ledger account, statement of profit and loss, and other comprehensive income, among others.
Taxation has always existed in one way or the other in Nigeria before the advent of colonialism. The various regions had their own unique system of taxation. In the north, which had a well-organized tax system before colonialism, the Emirates collected taxes like zakat, jizya, shuka, jangali, which were administered by the emirs. Other regions had their own unique indigenous systems. The traditional rulers present at the workshop attested to this while lending their voices to the importance of taxation in the development of any nation.
It is on record that the AMYRs have contributed immensely in the collection and distribution of zakat or jizya, and later as taxes, since before colonial intervention and after. However, the Islamic tax administration by the AMYRs observed during colonialism made it possible for the introduction of the famous British indirect rule system across the northern region then, that sustained the taxes. So the taxes were used in the construction of schools, road networks, provision of water, construction of health dispensaries, hospitals, market, and host of others. The doors of traditional rulers, particularly the AMYRs, are open to you for annual communication to the citizens on the voluntary tax compliance policy towards a successful tax identification and payments.
Traditional rulers, tax consultants, and the taxpayers. If we can get these three arms to work very well, I can assure you Nigeria may not need oil, because taxation is the oldest single means of revenue known to man. In 1980, here in Kano, the taxation which we used to implement throughout northern Nigeria, the poll tax on individuals and businesses and the cattle tax generally were abolished in 1980 by two governments, the Kano state government, then under Awaka Remi, and Kaduna state government under Balarabe Musa. This to me was the most single disaster to ever happen in revenue generation in Nigeria.
I think the issue of taxation needs to be more emphasized in this country. Taxation is always number one, from the basic family to the corporate body throughout the country. This is the kind of attitude and system we should adopt in order to ensure what we are now talking of, compliance of tax obligations. Then our role as traditional institution, we, since the time before the colonial period, has been instrumental in the implementation of tax obligations.
3 papers were presented at the workshop. The first was on bookkeeping and documentation, the tool for business growth, delivered by Mr. Oladele Abiodun. The second paper was on roles of tax consultants with regards to taxpayers' rights and obligations, delivered by Abdulmajid Abdulkari, while the third paper on Tax Pro Max was delivered by Mr. Aliyu of the Tax Pro Max team of the FIRS. The participants also had the opportunity to ask questions and make recommendations. Time will not permit us to share with you all that transpired at this sensitization workshop, but permit us to share with you excerpts from the first paper on bookkeeping and documentation, the tool for business growth.
The moment you stop feeding your business, 2 things can happen. It's either your business is dying or your business is dead. And what is the food of this business, or businesses as it were? Bookkeeping and appropriate documentation. Bookkeeping and documentation are like Siamese twins. They can never be separated till the world will come to an end. The most important aspects of bookkeeping is documenting, organizing and recording source documents. Recording what money comes into and flows out of a business, such as payments. All these records should be kept. Your cash book, your daily sales book, your ledgers, everything must be perfect.
It's getting interesting, isn't it? We cannot overemphasize the importance of bookkeeping, or record keeping if you like, in running your business and personal affairs. More from this highly stimulating and educating presentation and the other papers presented at the workshop will come to you in a subsequent episode of Tax Matters. This last week was indeed a busy and interesting one for the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, the body empowered by law to regulate the practice of taxation profession in Nigeria. The CITN held a series of events to wrap up activities for year 2023. The first was the pre-induction orientation program from Tuesday the 5th to Wednesday the 6th of December 2023 for the would-be inductees, closely followed by the 49th induction ceremony held on Thursday the 7th of December, where a total of 1,055 were inducted as associate members of the institute. And on Friday the 8th of December, 2 events took place. The first was the fellowship conferment on 473 associate tax professionals into the ranks of fellows of the CITN. And finally, the institute ended her activities for the year with her annual dinner and awards ceremony, where individuals, corporate organizations, and staff were recognized, appreciated, and rewarded for their contributions to the growth of the institute. It was a beautiful and colorful ceremony. Remember to join us next week for more exciting time on tax matters. It promises to be educating and enlightening. Thank you for watching and enjoy the best of this season.